I'm going to introduce you to a local family, the Erkkilas, who unfortunately have two kids who were diagnosed with cancer. And so I first met the Erkkila family in 2017 when their son Jonathan had a new diagnosis that required proton therapy. Following the video, Pat Brown, Jeff Rubens, and I actually, Pat and Jeff will be behind to answer some questions, okay, because I have to go on. Thank you.
We expected a lot of medical issues with William because he was born a little extra in every way. He has Down syndrome.
So if you deploy like every year, you're bound to hit some of these life events. That happened with both of our children. So with William, I was overseas when he got sick and nobody could really figure out what was going on with him. And he was 2 at the time.
Hey, hi. How's my news? Confused. Hey. You see Dr. Brown? Brown, yeah. Hi, Dr. Brown.
It's always a huge challenge for us whenever a patient's diagnosed with leukemia. It's a much bigger challenge for the family, obviously. But with the Down syndrome patients, they really struggle with some side effects of chemotherapies. You know, with research, we've been able to figure out that certain chemotherapy drugs work really well for Down syndrome kids like William, and are able to get them through it.
And then we thought, oh, okay, we got this and we have a treatment plan, and then boom, okay, we're done with childhood cancer. Went through a year-long course and then moved again, and then we're ready to rebalance and start life.
So my husband was gone. He was overseas in Iraq. And it was a Thursday that school was out. I will never forget. It was the only Thursday school was out. And my son came to me and said, "Mom, my head hurts." And he looked at me funny and just fell backward. 2 hours later, we had a bunch of white coats come in and say, "Your son didn't hit his head. It very well could be a tumor. We need to fly you to Johns Hopkins."
We now know at a genetic level what drives that leukemia, what makes that happen. We know what drugs work and what drugs don't. And we're moving towards a world where we can harness the power of our patient's own immune system to fight their leukemias, so that we can get away from the chemotherapy drugs that cause so many short and long-term side effects.
When you see the statistical changes, you see the childhood cancer mortality rates dropping, actually cancer across the board, and you know that there's a whole community of people doing research, a lot of medical science that's going into that. I'm very appreciative of all the efforts that are out there, and I think it's important to latch on to that little piece of hope that can come from that.
A lot of times people think after treatment that everything will just get better and that it's over, but what we're finding is the chemotherapy and treatments were designed for adults. They weren't designed for children. And so a lot of the things that last are really quite concerning.
Yeah, so so I'm Pat Brown. So I remember William and his family moved to Baltimore right after he had finished his upfront therapy for his AML, Down syndrome related AML. And they're a family that struck me right from the very beginning. You know, the dad, as you saw, the dad was an active duty soldier. I think he's in some sort of special forces, because that guy was not, you know, at times wasn't even reachable, and obviously, you know, a really committed, you know, patriot, and a lot of sacrifice there for our country. And then on top of that, to have a son, and his mom was just so expert at navigating the complicated world that is military medicine. And, you know, it just struck me immediately what an amazing family they were. And then, you know, William had terrible difficulties during his chemotherapy for AML. And those of us that have taken care of patients with Down syndrome and leukemia know that they are very sensitive to the chemotherapy side effects. And so to see William thrive after completion of his treatment was really remarkable. It was, you saw just an amazing character he is, and that he still wears that bow tie, which I love, and has those cool glasses. But then I remember, I'll never forget, I just happened to be checking in on a patient in the operating room when I saw the Erkkilas sitting in the waiting area. And I said, what's going on? I was immediately thinking something was going on with William. And then they told me about that Jonathan was in surgery. And I remember he had a really complicated presentation of his brain tumor. Jeff will know a lot more than me. But I just remember just being in shock. I couldn't believe that this family was going through this all over again. And, a completely unrelated, at least in my mind, unrelated, and, one in a billion, to have their family struck in such a profound way a second time was just remarkable. Jeff, I don't know if you want to share any thoughts about Jonathan's presentation and
Sure.
What?
Yeah, I think, Pat, you actually introduced me to the family initially, and like you said, just an incredible family, such a resilient family that had been through all of this before, and then faced it again with another new diagnosis, and just you could see the support in the family was everyone was so close and so supportive of each other, and something that was inspirational as they went through it. Jonathan, he presented as you heard his mom talk about in the film. He presented as he had passed out from his tumor. I remember he had a hemorrhage associated with his tumor, and at first it's not entirely clear what's under that area of bleeding, and as things cleared in the ensuing months, it was obvious that he had a tumor. But he did great with his treatment. He started with us, and then he went and saw Dr. Kwok over at the Proton Center at Maryland, and did amazing with his treatment. And thankfully, both of their kids have gone through it all, and you sort of could spot the third child that they had in here, and they seem to be doing really great because of that resilience and that support that they had for each other.
So hopefully the law of averages is on their side with their third child, and we thought long and hard about, in this era where so much more germline testing is going on, the thought of, is there some sort of germline predisposition here? And, we obviously referred them to genetics, but these are two I think reasonably to think these are wholly unrelated cancers. One developing in a child who clearly, with Down syndrome, that individual child had a cancer predisposition, but that's not an inherited genetic thing. That's a post-conception change, the Down syndrome that led to that. But, for Jonathan, I don't think there's necessarily an indication of a cancer predisposition.
Right,
there,
right. Yeah, no, nothing that we at least recognize at this point. And as Pat said, we sent them to genetics and couldn't identify anything that would link the two cases.
I just want to congratulate, Tasha and Lauren and CCF for connecting with this family. I mean, such a powerful story that it just is such a powerful family for getting the message across for how on one side devastating childhood cancer can be, but also how inspiring it can be. You can't help but watch that video and just get chills and say, okay, what can we all do in our lives to make things better for not just for children with cancer, but just for other people generally. I mean, you look at the smile on those, I can't imagine what kind of shape I'd be in were I a father of two children, having gone through that. Not only that, the hardships in the Erkkilas' lives that they've faced otherwise. And it just is such a great reminder of why this is all so important and why we get up every day and do what we do. So,
I don't see any questions.